Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.
Thank you for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. Wherever you are in the world, I am grateful that you take the time to enjoy the people that I bring you. I try to find people with inspiring stories who will hopefully touch at least one life. His name is Desmond Lawrence. He is an MBA, BSc lecturer, motivational speaker, media practitioner, and the rest of his accomplishments he will share with us as we continue with this interview. Welcome, Desmond.
Hi, it's good to be here, Jennylyn. Thank you for having me, of course.
And I didn't say you're from Trinidad and Tobago because I know most people would know that as soon as you begin to speak. You have a distinctive accent.
Well, I hope so. CNN did a poll a couple of years ago in which they said that the poll stated that the Trini accent is in the top 10 of the world in terms of likability and recognizability. So I'm hoping so.
Yeah, because I know that I lived in Trinidad for a while and I tried really hard to get it. But I guess I didn't succeed. And if I did, I've probably lost it because I've been living in the US for so long now.
Yeah, that happens.
So Lawrence, you've studied in Europe, in Scotland.
Well, not directly in Scotland. My master's degree is from the Heriot-Watt University, Edinburgh Business School, Heriot-Watt University of Scotland. But I didn't actually have to go to Scotland to study. Right. So what would have happened is that they have satellite universities here. So I was able to attend lectures and so on with lecturers who would have been abroad and coming here to teach, and of course local lecturers and stuff who represent the university and so on. So I didn't actually have to go to Scotland to attend my class.
Okay, got it. So they have a business school. Is it a part of UE?
Right. So where I did my master's, Edinburgh Business School is associated with the Heriot-Watt University of Scotland. But where I lecture at present, one of the things that I do, I lecture at university, and I lecture at the University of the West Indies School of Business and Applied Studies. Locally, it's called UE Roytech because many moons ago, before the University of the West Indies acquired it, it was actually a business school run by a banking entity here in Trinidad and Tobago called Royal Bank. But many years later, the University of the West Indies, UE, they acquired it. And now, yes, it is a separate department to the University of the West Indies. So it's actually called the University of the West Indies School of Business and Applied Studies. But many people still refer to it as UE Roytech.
So what subjects do you lecture?
My educational background is in mathematics, business, and education. So I lecture in quantitative methods, the business mathematics subjects. So quantitative methods, management science, finite mathematics. From time to time as well, I lecture in marketing and sometimes the human resource management component of some of the programs.
I wanted to discuss that with you specifically because in the past, most West Indians had to leave the West Indies if they wanted to further their education because you could only go to a certain degree. You can only get a certain degree in the West Indies or in South America. And then in order to get anything more advanced, you either had to go to England or come to the United States. But I'm so happy to hear that has changed.
Yeah, that's been for a while now. To the credit of the government, in the late 90s, they opened up the educational sector. Up until that point in time, many students who would have left high school, their only option was to go to the University of West Indies And because it was the only university here, that in itself, was a bit prohibitive. Also, too many to get into the University of the West Indies at the time, you had to have done some what we call here advanced levels. But not all the schools in Trinidad and Tobago offered advanced, high schools offered advanced levels. So, like I said, to the credit of the government back in the late, I think would have been over the late 90s into the 2000s, the government opened up the sector, and many local entities formed partnerships with many universities abroad. So you have like the Heriot University of Scotland, you have the London you have the London University, a number of universities. So they were able to partner here. So that opened up the sector. It was all in the government's trust to improve the human capital situation here in Trinidad and Tobago. So it was a good move.
And are you partners with University of the West Indies in Jamaica? Is there a
well, the University of the West Indies itself, they have campuses in Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago. I hope I have it right. But the University of the West Indies here in Trinidad and Tobago, that is the one that UWI Roytech is affiliated to.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. It's nice to bring everyone up to date on, what you can achieve living in the Caribbean in today's world. It's not just about COVID. Good things are happening.
Oh, of course, yeah, right around. And we try to keep positive.
All the conversations lately have been centered around COVID and how it's affecting different countries. And it's a fact that we can't ignore and shove it aside because it's still so prevalent. When I did a series on the COVID pandemic. And when I started, I was so proud of Trinidad and Tobago because you guys had it under control. You hardly had any deaths. And I've just found out recently that has changed. And now you have a lot more, you've had more deaths and your numbers are up. Why do you think that happened?
In my own opinion, I think it has a lot to do with COVID fatigue. I think a lot of people last year, the country was on lockdown for a substantial period of time. It had a significant impact on people's moving about. There was also a considerable impact on the business community. So I think when things got better, and the government decided, well, okay, we could roll back some of those measures. I think we could roll back those measures, yes, with some, with some judgment and some discretion. I think many people took the opportunity to use that to mingle and to go out and to congregate, which of course, as you know, just helped to spread the COVID-19. That's one. I think as well, so COVID fatigue, I would imagine, had a lot of people were fed up. People were fed up. People were not working. People were losing jobs, operating on half salaries, having to do more, a number of different things. So when the measures were rolled back, yes, like I said, people just decided, listen, we're going out there, whatever, and it started to congregate. And I think that I believe that's one of the major reasons. The other reason too, and this is more recently, we had our first case almost a month ago of the Brazilian variant of COVID-19. And if I am to believe what the literature is saying, is that variant seems to be much more contagious than the normal strain. So I think that actually increased transmissibility. That's two. So the Brazilian variant. And I think lastly, and this hinges on the first point that I made, people were trying to find ways to beat the precautions. So I'll give you an example. Bars were not allowed to, when they were opened up, bars were not allowed to have people inside. And people were getting around it by buying their alcohol and hanging around the bars. and congregating. So again, it hinges on the first point. I mean,
Yeah.
people just got tired and fed up. And I think those are the three main factors.
I'm so sorry. Hopefully, pretty soon you guys will get it back under control. We can't let this thing win. But
Well, my perspective is that life has to go on, and we have to. I think the thrush should be finding a way to live with it. How can we live with this? I don't think COVID-19 is going to go away anytime soon. But life has to go on, and is a matter of finding ways of living with it, and how do we find that middle ground between going about our daily lives, but at the same time mitigating the spread by limiting our contact with people and having to go to work in the normal way and so on. So I mean, it's a challenge, but like I said, my perspective is that we have to find a way to live with it. We can't be locked down permanently.
so let's talk about something more positive. You have a radio or a TV show?
I have a radio show at one of the nation's frequencies here. It's 107.7 FM. It's part of a bigger radio network called the Trinidad and Tobago Radio Network. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, it's affectionately called OJO. The reason because we have an app that we use. You can access the station from anywhere in the world, and the app is actually called the OJO app. So I am on one of the frequencies, 107.7 FM. I used to be on one of the other frequencies in the same network, 96.1, but I think over the past close to 12, 13 years, I've been at 107.7 FM.
So tell us, what is it all about?
Well, our programming at 107 is music driven, but because of the demographic we serve, and it's an adult demographic, urban adult demographic, and of course you can't have any program that's serving that kind of demographic and not be expected to speak sensibly on issues. So even though it's music driven, it's primarily music, we do comment on issues, we do news, news and entertainment news, we give updates as to what's happening in the country. And like I said, each announcer, we're expected to, like I said, understand your time and space and give some comment sensibly on issues within that music driven format. So it's a little difficult sometimes because we have to play music, but we don't want to talk too much that we interrupt the music, but at the same time we want to be able to say what it is we have to say in a sensible way. And of course, all that goes with that national development and educating the audience, informing them and that kind of thing. So it's a little difficult sometimes, but yes, but that's essentially what my show is about.
So you've been doing this for 13 years.
Well, no, 13 plus actually, 20 years. I spent 7 years at the sister frequency 96.1, and then the rest of the remaining 13 on 107.7. In between, I did some television as well, but I probably did that for about 2-3 years. It was becoming a little hectic, doing the TV and the radio, and then having to lecture. And I didn't mention this, but I also teach at high school.
Oh, you do? You teach at a high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was becoming very difficult to juggle all of those things. So I had to give up the television, but I'm hoping I've been approached to do some television sometime in the future. So I'll see how it goes. Once the time permits and the good Lord allows me, I'm fine.
I'm so happy. So you are really giving a lot back to your community. And
Yes, I try to.
That's what I'm all about. I try to give, and we give what we can give.
Of course, yes.
So
Yeah.
this is great that you are so actively involved in your country. Now, how have you been able to help people, especially the people that you teach, during these challenging times? Because I would imagine in Trinidad, you've also been distance learning and distance teaching.
Yes, remote learning is.
How have you observed it either benefited or not the people that you teach?
Let's start with the benefits. I think what it has done, the whole teaching learning process remotely, I think it has allowed students who otherwise would not have had the opportunity to pursue a course of study, probably because, where they live very far from where they have to go to classes, or perhaps it was just impossible. I think the remote learning teaching learning has allowed that group of students to take the opportunity and to pursue courses of study. So I think in that way it has been beneficial. And that's the overriding benefit. I think, however, there are also some attendant challenges. We do have internet providers here in Trinidad and Tobago, but yet internet access, in fact, we have more than one. It's quite a liberalized economy. We have more than one, but yet in certain parts of the country, accessibility remains an issue. So where you go particularly to the rural areas in South and even Central Trinidad, you find that a lot of the times internet access is an issue. So it defeats the entire purpose. And that's remote teaching. That's a benefit, and that's the most, and in terms of the challenge, as the main challenge. Also to many students, particularly those who are in secondary and primary school, many parents just simply can't afford to put the internet infrastructure into place. So they may not be able to access, or they would not be able to access internet. Also, many of them, we do have a number of people who are below the poverty line, for whom a laptop or a tablet or even a phone remains a challenge. To the credit of the government and our opposition here in Trinidad and Tobago, and to many business people, they've been trying to bridge that gap. I know
Oh, that's great.
they've been trying to give children tablets and so on, but still it remains a challenge. It is a challenge. I mean, if you speak to any high school teaching or primary school teaching in particular in Trinidad and Tobago at this point, that is going to be the number one concern.
I'm so happy to hear that some people are stepping up to the plate, though,
Yeah.
because I did a show earlier with, I think, St. Lucia, and that was their concern. The kids who lived in the rural areas having access because of internet issues. So I would imagine these kids have been greatly
Affected, yeah.
yes. How is the government planning, if at all, to help them to catch up?
Well, like I said, to the credit of the government, I think they've been trying to partner with many local entities, local business entities. I think there's an initiative at present by our Ministry of Education called Adopt a School, where they're getting local NGOs, businesses to donate laptops and to donate tablets and so on. But the volume of students, the sheer amount that don't have, that there are who don't have these devices is a lot. So I suppose it's a work in process. But in addition to that, I have to say there are many people who are, on their own volition, are doing pretty much the same. I know in my community, of course, I was reading the other day. I live in Central Trinidad, and I was reading the other day of a couple of businesses were pooling together to donate laptops and tablets. I know the opposition. And usually there's this schism between the opposition and the government, that kind of thing. But I believe, they're on the same page when it comes to, national development. I know there's some opposition MPs who as well are going out of their way to try to get tablets and so on. But as I said, even with the tablets, and there are issues with that because of the sheer volume of students, but there's also the issue of accessibility. So we have the tablet or we have the laptop, but how do we access? Yeah, exactly. So, how do you connect to the internet and so on? So, that's the issue.
Boy, I tell you though, I was having a conversation with a friend last night, and I was saying, we've heard where people complain because they say young people and people in general aren't speaking to each other as much because you see them out to dinner and everybody's like on their phone, and you're like, why did you bother to come here for dinner if you're just going to sit there and text? But when you think about it, some people complain about that aspect of it. But
Mhm.
could you imagine what this world would have done in this pandemic without the internet, without these devices? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
seriously, you and I
Mhm.
can do this. I'm a television producer going on 11 years. And I've always, well, not always, but I've done most of my shows in a TV studio. I've
Right.
traveled around the world and done a few others, but for the most part, I've done it in a studio. And I couldn't fathom ever producing a show via the internet or
But I
a
tell you,
program like Zoom.
exactly,
And
exactly. And
now I have done over 200 videos on Zoom.
mm.
And I don't even know if I ever want to go back into a studio.
But this is it. I was telling somebody yesterday. Because of my educational background and my connection to one of the tertiary institutions here, I often get work as a consultant. And previous to this COVID-19 pandemic, it used to be very straining. Sometimes you have to go for meetings. So sometimes I would leave one job and I have to hustle to a meeting before I get to the radio station and so on. And then, or sometimes you have to have lunchtime meetings or with clients, who want to see presentations and so on and so forth. And it was driving me crazy. And the pandemic came along and I started to wonder, what am I going to do? I mean, like, this is going to hit me. And then I just fell into it and I realized, listen, doing this on Zoom and on Teams and so on, it makes it much easier. And I have to tell you, I'm loving it. And like you, I don't know how I'm going to go back to the normal, if there is indeed going to be a normal as normal was before.
Yeah,
But I enjoy it.
I think it's going to be a new normal. And I think that some people who have a difficulty with change will have difficulty with it, but they will eventually adapt because what would be the alternative? And so for me, I feel like you still have to make that effort though to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, well,
and
that's
well, get some fresh air because it's very easy just to sit in front of your tablet all day.
of
And
course, of course.
you can do everything via the
Yeah,
computer phone now.
you essentially have to adapt. I mean, one of the things I've been busy doing as well, and just yesterday I was talking to someone who heads a company who was interested in me doing some consultancy work for him, and we were chatting about it, and I was telling him that I've been doing some research, and there are simple things that you can do to mitigate that eye pressure from the screen, to mitigate that sedentary lifestyle that will come with just sitting behind a computer all day and that kind of thing. So I try to improvise. I don't sit behind my laptop 24/7. I try to have a cutoff time. So if I realize, listen, you know what, listen, 9 o'clock in the night, that's it for me, I'm done. I lock off from my telephone, my laptop, my tablet, everything. Also, in between, I take breaks. I try to take a break every hour. I would walk outside, I would stretch, do some deep breathing, and come back. Even when I'm on the radio station on an evening, every so often I take a little walk downstairs, come back up, and so on. It's difficult, but I mean, like as you said, the human spirit is a very indomitable one. And human nature is quite an innovative one. So, people will find a way to adapt, but they have to be willing to adapt.
What have you learned about yourself?
I learned.
What did this pandemic force you to realize about you that you've been oblivious to? Because I learned a lot of things about me. I want to hear what you learned about you.
Quite a few things, too many to mention, but I'll mention just a couple. I'm a usually gregarious individual. My weekends are filled with hanging out with people. I like people and I feed off their energy. Even simple things like going to the gym. I will go to the gym and I feed off the energy of people. So I'm a real people person. This panta and I wouldn't say I was 100% extrovert and 0% introvert. But what this pandemic has taught me is that I am more of an introvert than I really thought. I don't necessarily have to go out and greet. I'm learning to appreciate the alone time and being alone and not being around people, that kind of thing, better than I thought I would have, because that was a serious worry to me. How am I going to do this? But it worked out well. So that's one. I think two, I learned that with respect to myself, I learned that and this is going to sound very silly, that I don't need to spend the amount of money I would have done previously on buying food outside. I could easily find time to prepare meals at home and cook for myself, and it's healthier anyway, that kind of thing. And that was something that was, I couldn't find time to cook. I could, or same, and my daughter as well. I have a 26-year-old daughter who lives with me, and it was the same thing. She's working as well. We couldn't find. I'm like, now I'm realizing, hey, I could do this. It's just a choice you have to make. I don't need to always go out and buy food and so on. So those are two of the things that I learned, that I learned about myself, and that I didn't think I would have been able to deal with prior to the pandemic.
That's great. Well, I think that those are two of the things I also learned about myself. And as a matter of fact, the first time I have eaten out since the pandemic, it was weird. It felt weird eating food that I didn't fix myself.
Yes.
And then I thought, my goodness, how did I just eat out all the time? Because I too live alone. And so a lot of times my excuse is, I'm not going to cook just for me. And so I just go eat out. And so that was a big thing for me. And now I like it. I like my own cooking.
Yeah. So I'm appreciating that.
From what you know, how badly has your country's economy been set back because of this? Is it pretty bad? Do you guys think that? Because Trinidad has always had a robust economy based on what I know, because you're one of the more developed West Indian islands.
Yeah. Well, just a hint at your last point. Yes, our economy is multifaceted. We've had our oil and gas sector. We've had other sectors as well. We have a vibrant manufacturing sector, and even tourism, particularly in Tobago. As far as the economy is concerned, the latest figures have not been released, but for sure, based on what we saw trending last year, we know, for example, there were the obvious sectors that took the hit. We have the tourism sector, obviously, took a serious hit. As you may know, we had to cancel carnival celebrations in this year. Right, I have to make sure I have it right. Yeah, this year, 2021. And carnival season. I mean, if anybody knows anything about Trinidad and Tobago carnival, the Trinidad and Tobago is like the carnival is like the carnival mecca, and it's usually synonymous with a number of tourist arrivals and lots of activities, and so that had to be cancelled. So there was the obvious hit in tourism to the government's coffers. In terms of the internal economy, many people would have had their businesses set up, to take advantage of things like tourist arrivals. Of course, that would have gone down to north, quite apart from the hotels and so on. You have people who have guest houses and so on. Those people would have taken a hit, and that's just the tourism sector. Oil and gas sector has still been the same, but I mean, in reality, the oil and gas sector really only employs probably like about 4 to 7% of the population anyway, if so much. So other sectors, the manufacturing sector has been going on, but I think the biggest hit would come from the internal economy. So the guy who has the barber shop, or you have the restaurants, the restaurant sector would have taken a hit. So too would the retail sector, and by extension, once those sectors are hit, and the entertainment sector, once those sectors are hit, it means there will be capillary effects in other sectors. So for example, advertising, media houses and so on would be taking a hit because people their businesses not sure to see in the next 2 weeks. So we're not going to place any ads. And because of that, you have a serious trickle down. So I haven't seen the latest figures, but I would expect a contraction of the economy And I guess we'll just have to see. I know our budget is coming up later in the year for the 2021-2022 fiscal year, that kind of thing. As we get closer to that, we'll be hearing more figures released. But certainly, I mean, just on what it is we are observing, we could see that the economy is taking a hit. In the pure economic factors, things like inflation rates and so on, appear to be constant. But then if you understand what drives inflation, that's not, it's not necessarily surprising, and it's not necessarily a good sign either. A sign that all is well. It just means that people are not purchasing much and so on. If they have wage pull inflation and cost push inflation and that kind of thing. So like I said, the internal economy, I think, would have taken a serious hit, but we'll know we'll know when figures are released.
So we're out of time, and this has been such a great interview, and it's been wonderful hearing about, life in Trinidad and how, how it's affecting you as an educator. I always give my guests a chance to answer this question before I wrap. What haven't I asked you that you want to leave with my viewers?
Stay positive. My mantra is positivity breeds positivity, is something I say every time I exit my radio show. It's hard, and I know in some cases it's difficult for the average person to even imagine, but rest assured, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And if we are to, glean anything from, economic history, generally any kind of contraction or any kind of bust is usually followed by some sort of boom. So, there is light at the tunnel. We just in the meantime have to try to stay safe, try to ride it out, and most of all, let's reach out to each other. Let's try to help each other. It doesn't mean you have to go congregate, but reach out virtually. There's some people need help with groceries, things like that. Whatever you could do, whatever you can, with whatever you have to help anybody that you can.
Desmond, thank you so much. Thank you for giving us the Trinidad update from your perspective and your knowledge. It's nice to know what is going on around the world during these challenging times. And once again, I'm so grateful that you were able to afford the time to share with us. And thank you for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. I am sure you will enjoy my guests as much as I have. And if you enjoy this segment or any of my segments, please hit like and subscribe. And I will see you next time with another inspiring guest. Thank you.
Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.